Thanks, Larry. Thanks for having me. Back in 2005, I was in my residency training at the University of Utah, and had the opportunity to come down to do part of my training at the BYU campus, just at the Student Health Center, and I've basically been here ever since. I have been seeing BYU students ever since, so it's about 15 years, and I just really love working with BYU students as a psychiatrist. So my path really wasn't going to be a psychiatrist. I wanted to go to well, I was going to be an English teacher for a while. I was an English major here at BYU. I got my master's degree here at BYU, and I taught for a full year as a lectureship here at BYU before I went to medical school. And I think that kind of pushed me, those skills I learned as an English major, critical thinking and analysis and interpretation of text, I kind of applied those to people and their stories, and I just love people's stories. And so I became a psychiatrist. So at BYU, they have took our headshots for the clinicians, and they decided, hey, Bill, we're gonna do a promotion thing, maybe some ads for the health center, and so is that okay if we use your photo? I'm like, all right. So this is what happened. They Photoshop Gryffindor scarves and so my nephew calls me up. He's like, hey, Uncle Bill, your face is on a bus. I was like, finally, my dream is come true. So I was like, what are you talking about? So I went down to try to find where the bus was, and took a selfie, and now this is my profile picture for everything. So this was fun. But being a psychiatrist, people talk to me and they're like, man, you don't seem like a psychiatrist. And I figured, well, that's just because of the media, because when you think of psychiatrists, they always have the glasses, the beard, the balding hair. And then there's movie psychiatrists that you have too. The evil psychiatrist from Batman, he's the Scarecrow. That was back in 2005. And so there's also a psychiatrist that was in the Santa Claus in 1994. So this is probably before you guys were born. Have you ever heard of Santa Claus? So this guy has these funky sweaters, and he's kind of soft-spoken, and he's the psychiatrist. And a funny story. We're watching this with I have these two boys, and they were little at the time, and we're watching the Santa Claus on a vacation. And they knew I was a psychiatrist. They knew their dad's a psychiatrist, their dad's a doctor, and we're watching the Santa Claus. And then there's a part in the movie where the Tim Allen character is kind of bagging on his ex-wife's kind of boyfriend who's a psychiatrist, and he says, "Oh, he's not a real doctor. He's a psychiatrist." And my two kids, they look at me and they're like, "What?" And then they look at the TV and they look at me. He's not a real doctor. He's a psychiatrist. They start laughing their heads off. And so this is just an example. This is Devin and Hayden. And they, ever since then, they love to just say, "Oh, he's not a real doctor. He's a psychiatrist." And it's kind of a thing that you get. I mean, being a psychiatrist is not like the normal doctor in that, you're in the mall and maybe you're walking through the mall and you see your pediatrician or you see your dermatologist. You're like, "Hey, Dr. Smith, hey, what's up?" No, he's my dermatologist. Or "Oh, there's Dr. Jones, he's my primary care doctor." Nobody's like, "Hey, Dr. Bunn, he's my psychiatrist. He's the best. If you're suicidal, he'll hook you up, man. He's the best." So I don't get that. I move into a new ward, and I move in, and people are like, "So what do you do?" And I'm always like, "I'm a physician." And they always want to know what kind of physician. It's not like they can't just be happy with that. What kind of physician? And I'm like, oh, here we go. I'm a psychiatrist. And they go, "Oh. Oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I don't really want to talk to you anymore because I'm afraid you're going to analyze me." And I say, too late. And so, being a psychiatrist, it has its ups and downs. So I have a couple of things I want to, you have time to do stuff. This is kind of a little side hobby of mine. I got into making these joke aromatherapy lotions, and I have a question. This is kind of a quiz. If you guys raise your hand if you know the answer, and you could win this repression lotion. Repression. Forget about it. A special blend of essential oils will help you bury those unconscious fears and thoughts deep inside. It's like, I think it's not with doTERRA officially, but it's, question is, by raise of hand, in the 1991 movie, What About Bob, what was the name of the book written by Dr. Leo Marvin? Baby Steps. You win it. Come on up. You get your repression lotion. It's a nice pear-berry scent. It'll help you repress things if you need to. So, I mean, it's humorous. This is like, people always ask me, what did you think about What About Bob? I'm like, it kind of feels like I'm at work, you know, a little bit. And that's what happens as a psychiatrist when you watch shows with a lot of kind of drama, interpersonal drama. And it's like kind of draining. It feels like, oh my gosh, I'm at work right now. So I got the repression lotion there. It's a body lotion. I want to talk a little bit about depression. And just kind of like the biological basis. This is an ad for to treat depression. Say goodbye to depression with some wine. I don't know. That seems like less effective. So here's another question. This is for another lotion. So this one, I don't know if you might be able to Google this one, but I'll see who's the closest. How many Americans meet criteria for major depression but are poorly served or untreated?
300,000?
No. You can just guess. It's in the millions, just so you know. It's for denial lotion. This is denial. Yes. 6 million? Close. That's pretty close. So you'll be the closest. Anybody else want to?
4.5 million?
Very close. I'll give it to you. 4 million. Well, there's like over 14 million people in America with depression. But about half of them get treatment, but still the treatment is not necessarily adequate. And they can have side effects, or they just have difficulty with finding treatment. So what I like to do when I talk with patients a little bit is just talk a little bit about the biology of depression. And so people think, oh, it's all in your head. Well, yeah, for sure, it's in your head. Where else is it going to be? Like in your pancreas? I mean, but biologically speaking, there's stuff that happens in your brain, right? I mean, whether you have a traumatic event, maybe postpartum, something bad happens, over time, the brain will start to have changes in the way it works. So these are kind of the areas that are connected with depression. Okay, so we have like the prefrontal cortex, which is like right here in the front, and this is where personality is, concentration is here in the prefrontal cortex. But you can see that they have these connections, which I'll show you, to these other areas. They're kind of like these pathways of neurons that connect the prefrontal cortex down into the deeper areas of the brain. So these regions, what this slide shows is some regions have a low functioning, like metabolically speaking. When someone has depression, so you're depressed not just like a day. It's like if you're depressed day after day to meet criteria for major depressive disorder, at least 2 weeks of feeling down and sad and hopeless and unmotivated and difficulty functioning. What's happening in your brain is that prefrontal cortex, the metabolism slows down. These other areas, it slows down, striatum, hypothalamus, thalamus. But also, there's some area in the anterior cingulate gyrus, in the cortex of that, it kind of speeds up. And so these are where they're thinking like, okay, this is where the brain has these kind of problems, like it's slowing, something's actually happening. And so it's like, what do we do about that? So these monoamine neurotransmitter projections are the things that connect, and I call this the brain's talking to itself. So this is how the brain talks to itself and regulates itself, is through these channels or these pathways, these neurons. So what we try to do is, if the appropriate amount of neurotransmitters, so the three main neurotransmitters we theoretically think are involved here, you got the serotonin, you got dopamine, you got norepinephrine. So when it's appropriate amount, the brain's happy, it's working, it's functioning, it's doing, you're not non-functioning. But if you start to have some kind of dysfunction, and they say, well, let's look at the brain and see what's happening to the brain, you can see it's linked to depression. So there's fewer, maybe serotonin, there's fewer dopamine, and there's other factors too. So it's not just pure serotonin, you know. But the thing is, these connections, the way it talks to itself is the issue there. So what we have is like the theory is with medications. It's like how can we restore, or is there any science to this? Is there something that can help? And you know, they found that certain kind of things will help the lowered neurotransmitters. So you have like an antidepressant comes in, kind of makes the brain have a therapeutic effect. So you'll have like an improved, these are the regions that kind of show where this is like responsible for. So like you have an improved mood here, increased concentration up here in the prefrontal cortex. This is probably a reason if people get a head injury or concussion, a lot of times they'll have injury up here in the prefrontal cortex. So you'll notice that if maybe you're an athlete or something, you hurt yourself in an accident, you used to be able to concentrate really well, and you used to be able to remember things really well, but all of a sudden you're like, man, it's not, my memory isn't very good. My concentration is poor. And that's because that's where it lives. The concentration is right here in the prefrontal cortex. So the thing is, you get this therapeutic effect with different medications. There's another thing, though, that I wanted to let you know, that part of the body that makes the neurotransmitters, it's really a building block of neurotransmitters is folic acid. Folic acid is in our diet, but like about 33% of Caucasians don't have a genetic mutation that makes it so the regular folate doesn't get processed or converted into usable folic acid. So you can be taking it, eating all the spinach you want, but you're having still low folic acid. It's called the MTHFR, like methyltransferase gene. So what they did is they figured out, hey, if you get this stuff called L-methylfolate, you can get it on Amazon. It's like a pre-treated methylated folic acid. So as a vitamin, if you're like, you know what, I'm feeling kind of low a lot, I don't know, I don't really want to talk to anybody about it, but maybe if I started improving my diet, I started taking some L-methylfolate, it can beef up your neurotransmitters just on its own. And I've had people have some resolution to depression or some improvement in mood just by taking that, some L-methylfolate. And you just get it on Amazon, about 15 milligrams. So if you, kind of the downside with the antidepressant medications is you can get a lot of side effects. Because, for example, if you increase your serotonin, where does most of the serotonin reside? It's like in your gastrointestinal system. There's a ton of serotonin down here. And so we start taking an antidepressant, we start increasing serotonin levels. It takes several weeks before it comes on board, 4 to 5 weeks, 4 to 6 weeks before it starts to make changes in your brain. But you'll get the side effects of gastrointestinal problems early on. But you can see there's a bunch of other side effects too, dry mouth, nausea, weight gain. But that's not with like every medicine, but those are the downside of medications like that. And also another downside of medications, which is unfortunate, but like they did this STAR-D trial back in 2006, and it was a really cool trial because it was the first trial that really put antidepressants head to head. Okay, so this is the thing that drug companies do. They'll make a drug and they'll test it for 8 weeks against placebo. And if they can get clinical significant changes against placebo, then they're like, we're golden. But hardly anybody will be like Prozac versus Effexor, ding, ding. They never do that. This was the first trial that did that. And they did a first-line treatment, second-line treatment, third-line treatment. And the downside of it was we found, this graph talks about percent to remission. So in psychiatry, there's response and then there's remission. So response means your mood improves a little bit. Remission means depression pretty much gone. So our goal is to get people to remission, not just, that's my goal anyway. It's like I want depression done. In this trial, they found that 27% would get remission. That doesn't seem like a lot. So there's more people that responded. Around 60% responded, but 27% got to fully remission with that one drug. The first drug didn't work, and they added a second drug according to their protocol. So they added a different kind of drug. It kind of goes down, down, and down. So by the time you're getting to like medicine number 3, medicine number 4, your chances of actually getting to remission go down. which is a bummer. So for me, I say, well, maybe we didn't give that first medication a good enough trial. We didn't maybe get it to a right dose. We didn't for your metabolism. But still, at the same time, it's like, wow, there's got to be something other than, things that we can do for this. And so medications, I mean, that's kind of my world, is I'm involved with the medicines. As far as being a part of the treatment plan, medications is a big part for me in neuroscience and trying to figure out what's going on in the brain. As a psychiatrist, I'm able to order labs, I can order MRIs, I can understand what's happening physically in the body. Maybe there's some other things that are medical problems that are masquerading as a mental health issue. But I find it's funny that the medication industry and medicine, it's like people think that psychiatrists are getting like kickbacks from drug companies and stuff like that. That just does not happen. I actually don't like talking to the drug reps that come to my office because they're trying to like, here, take this, and they show me their trial and like, oh yeah, it's an 8-week trial against placebo. Good job, awesome. But look, the placebo group, they also improved too. Isn't that pretty interesting? Oh yeah. But the ads are funny. Like if you start, and kind of sad. If you go through time, this one is disturbing on many levels. You can't set her free, but you can help her feel less anxious. It's like, hello, sexism. And basically they're saying, you know what, you can help her deal with all the stuff she has to do. It's like, oh my gosh. Back in the day, they also put lithium, which is a pretty powerful mood stabilizer, in 7-Up. Until 1948. So they used to put it in the soda. And they were like, hey, it helps you. Takes the ouch out of grouch. So that's pretty cool. So I kind of get a kick out of like looking at historical stuff. So what I did when I was a resident at the University of Utah, I decided, I had all these psychiatric medications, and I was really like, how am I gonna remember all these things? There's so many. So I decided to write a song about it. So I wrote a song that has all the psychiatric medications in the one song. So I'm gonna perform that for you now. So when I say the medicine you take, just raise your hand, and then we'll all... You don't have to, unless you want to. So patients would be like, I can't remember the name of the medicine I was taking, and I'm like, okay. There. Elavil, anafranil, imipramine, dizipramine, nortriptyline, protriptyline, there's doxepin and seroquel. Parnate, marplinardol, which is also known as phenelzine. You must be very careful not to use this drug with tyramine. Prozac, Paxil, Lexapro, and don't forget Celexa, fluvoxamine and sertraline, and of course Cymbalta. There's Remeron and Trazodone, there's Terzone and Effexor, and augment with Wellbutrin if you want to make them better. There's lithium and Depakote and Topamax will cost them cash. There's Tegretol, Amygdal, but beware of the life-threatening rash. Glazerel, Zyprexa, Endospheridone, and Geodon, Abilify, Prolixin, Haldol, Pantriliphone. Not in Stelazine, but loxapine is very fine. But Thorazine, Sorrental, and Meloril are not first line. Flurazepam and Ativan, Strattera, and Focalin, Dexedrine, Meridia, Buspar, Ritalin. There's Restoril and Ambien, Lunesta, you'll sleep very sound. Concerta and Adderall keep kids from jumping up and down. There's Librium and Klonopin, but Halcyon sits on the shelf. There's Xanax and the Valium, which I prefer to use myself. These are the medications from which we make a living. You must explain the side effects or lawsuits you'll be getting. So that always was the patient, make him happy. Doctor singing to him. Okay, so what I wanted to do also, this is the first time I've ever gone through this presentation. I made it specially for you guys. I want to talk a little bit about the difference between depression and bipolar disorder, okay? Because I get this question a lot. People think that bipolar disorder means if your moods swing a lot, you have like all 4 seasons in one day, you're like, that must be bipolar. But the deal is, I use this metaphor of a house, okay? And so the house is your mood house, okay? And so on the main level would be, I would call that normal mood. Normal mood means you're functioning, you're doing what, you get out of bed, you're able to do what you need to do. And inside the main level, you can have ups and downs. There's good things that happen, bad things that happen. but you're still able to function. Your mood is not sad, not necessarily happy, but it's just regular, normal mood. Okay. If somebody has depression, now pretty much everybody on the planet is going to have some kind of depression at some point. For some reason, people die, people lose jobs. BYU loses to Toledo. I mean, it's you're going to get sad. Now, if you get sad for a day or two, you feel down, sad, hopeless, helpless, worthless, unmotivated, not getting enjoyment out of things, and then you pop back up to the main floor, so that's good. You go down to the basement of depression for a while, you pop back up in a day or two, golden. Okay, that's normal. If you go down into the basement for more than 2 weeks, they kind of make an arbitrary limit. If you go down for more than 2 weeks, that's considered major depressive disorder. And also, in the basement, feel down, sad, hopeless, helpless, worthless, unmotivated. Some physical things can happen too. Difficulty concentrating, difficulty sleeping, difficulty like hard to fall asleep, waking up earlier than you want to, poor energy, just like no motivation, thoughts of wishing it could be over, thoughts of like, man, it'd be better off if I died, or I wouldn't be so bummed if I got struck by lightning, you know? That is a major depression. Now, the way depression looks, though, you go down into the basement, at least 2 weeks, but it could be a month, it could be a year. Now, it could be expected, like loss of a child, death of a child. And you could be down in the basement for a really long time, like years. And sometimes you might, if you ever thought about it, you could come out of the basement, but as soon as you think about it, something reminds you of that child, boom, you're back in the basement again. But the way depression looks is main level, basement, then it does resolve. Come back up to the main level, and then, unfortunately, it recurs and you go back to the basement. That's what major depression looks like, okay? So our goal is to treat until you get out of the basement, do our best. And there's other things besides medicines we can do, like talk therapy, and we'll talk a little bit about those things. But the opposite of that is the next level. The top two levels, hypomania, and the very top level is mania, okay? So that is the opposite of depression. The opposite of depression. So think everything that depression is, do the opposite. You have racing thoughts, decreased need for sleeping, tons of excessive energy. You have what's called grandiosity. You think you're like king and queen of the world. You're doing things out of character for yourself, impulsive spending, maybe hypersexual, doing things like hooking up with people you never would. You feel like you're the life of the party. You cannot stop talking. And it also can be like increased irritability, like you're just like really mad and angry. And it lasts for 3, 4, 5 days straight. Not just an afternoon, not just a day. 3 or 4 days straight of that, okay? And that is something that's pretty rare. So hypomania means all that. Mania in the top of the attic is like it happens so long, you're not sleeping. So like by day 4 of not sleeping and all this energy, you've made lasagna for your whole ward at 3 o'clock in the morning and painted your whole house. After about 3 or 4 days of that, you get psychotic. What that means is your brain starts playing tricks on you and you start getting paranoid, you start hearing voices that aren't there, seeing things that aren't there, and that's when people have to go into the hospital. So a lot of times people are like, what's the difference between like bipolar type 1, bipolar type 2? It's pretty easy actually. Bipolar type 1, you become psychotic and have to go into the hospital basically. You need to be hospitalized because you are not with reality. And hypomania means you're not to the level, it's kind of like diet mania. You're not quite to the level, but now, if someone's in a manic or hypomanic episode, they're not really happy to come and see me because they are doing awesome. They started a company, online, and they did all this stuff. I say, hey, we gotta bring you down. I'm like, no, I don't want to be down. So if we could be like hypomanic all the time, sweet, that'd be cool. But what happens with bipolar is you crash down. So you go straight from the top. As soon as the manic episode is over, boom, you crash down into the basement. So you're depressed again. So the treatments are different. And I guess that is the big deal with this is, so that's the take-home point of that is, so you understand what manic looks like. Now, a manic episode generally once a year, maybe twice a year, okay? Not necessarily once a month. I mean, that's more rare. I mean, there's a couple of people that have kind of mood instability, and there's a lot of things that mimic bipolar disorder that are kind of like overlap. One of them is called borderline personality disorder, where you're like really reactive mood. You have, fears of abandonment, difficulty with interpersonal relationships, and you can kind of go up, crying, laughing at the same time, which would be uncomfortable. But you have just rapid mood swings. People that have had trauma, people that have PTSD in the past, they become emotionally dysregulated or emotionally sensitive, and so certain things trigger them to have big mood shifts. And a lot of times they'll think, it must be bipolar, but really it's not bipolar. But that's where you have to sit with a mental health professional and kind of tease that out, when it started, what's happening. A lot of times we'll use mood stabilizers for people that have borderline personality disorder or acute PTSD stuff, because the mood stabilizers kind of keep you in the middle. So lithium, Depakote, Topamax, topiramate, or carbamazepine. There's one called Abilify. So there's a bunch of them. But their goal is to try to keep you here. And sometimes it's I don't want to be here, I'd like to be up in the attic. So bipolar disorder is one of the hardest things to treat, because people will go off their medicines. Why? Because the attic is awesome, and it's great. But then they get depressed and oh man, I'm depressed. So the problem that we do see is people that have bipolar disorder, really it's bipolar disorder, but we think it's just depression. And the reason why is because depression is the first thing that presents. Usually it's depression first, not the manic episode. So people come to me and say, I'm really depressed, all the symptoms in the basement, I give them Prozac. The next thing you know, boom, lift off. So that's a serotonin-induced mania. And so that's, some people say, yeah, I was doing fine until I got this medicine, and then, so basically it's a misdiagnosis. So guess how long it takes to make the diagnosis of bipolar, which is sad. Generally, according to the literature, a person with bipolar disorder, they see mental health professionals, and it doesn't get identified for 5 years. So that's sad. When I read that, I'm we can do better. But basically, that's the deal. Overall, people don't recognize that it is really bipolar and they don't have the right treatment. So one of the things, so people ask me a lot of times, you're a psychiatrist, you should know what the secret of happiness is. What's the secret of happiness? And I'm wow, that's a great question. And so I have you saw my two sons, Devin and Hayden. Now, they're older now. Devin, when he graduated from high school, he was kind of a loner guy. He didn't really want to get a yearbook. So he didn't get a yearbook, and he took a picture. We didn't. In marriage, lower your expectations. I don't know, there's a lot of people getting married this winter. I have a lot of people I know, they're engaged, and I'm what's the secret to marriage? Lower your expectations. I think it's important. A couple other tips, though, in addition to changing or lowering your expectations. So when Devin we were at this, and this is I think this is where he got this idea from. We went to this resort one time, and we were on this vacation, and we went to this restaurant, and they were talking about the chocolate duo dessert. The chocolate duo, and they're all are you going to get the chocolate duo? And we were so excited about the chocolate duo. So we get the chocolate duo, we eat the chocolate duo, and then as we're leaving the restaurant, I'm so Devin, what did you think of the chocolate duo? This is Devin. Expectation, reality. So I'm all right, Devin. So that became our family motto, expectation, reality. Here's a couple of things I want to just put out there to you guys. Some wisdom from a psychiatrist. Since I've been doing this for a while now, I want to give you guys some tips, and then we'll talk a little bit about we were talking about treatments, trends, and an Adam Sandler impression, which I do at the end, so you want to make sure you stay to the end. I'll quickly go through some of these things. Number one, the brain-like structure. Brain-like structure. So the more structure you can give your brain, the happier it is. If you think about it, maybe if you ever did a mission or something for the church, you have a really rigid schedule. You wake up and you kind of know what you're going to do in the morning. You have your study time, you have your proselyting time, you have your lunch time, you have your dinner time. Your brain is happy. The reason why I think the brain's happy with that is because you don't have to make value judgments for every decision. Oh my gosh, should I do this? Do I do that? Do I organize this? What's my priority? What's good? What's better? What's best? And so if you have to do that for everything, it takes a lot of brain bandwidth. And so the more that you can structure your life where you get up at the same time every day, I think that's important. So have a set bedtime, a set wake up time. Brain likes that. I think that if you, even if you organize time to I'm gonna watch Netflix from this time to this time, but that gives you structure so then you don't end up procrastinating, because I think procrastinating is also something that causes unhappiness and stress. One of the things, I was gonna do questions at the end. Is that okay? One of the things that we do in our culture is we journal write. Write a journal, keep a journal, all this stuff. I kind of think if you are prone to anxiety and sometimes depression, journal writing is not good to do right before bed, because you'll start thinking of all the coulda, woulda, shoulda, oh man, I said that. And so you're kind of bringing up some of those stressful things. I think what's better to do before bed is to make a list of the things you have to do the next day. Because say you say, I gotta do this email, I gotta do this one assignment, I gotta call this person. If you write it down, you can kind of give your brain permission to just shut off and go to sleep, because you won't forget it. You're I wrote it down, I'm not gonna have to worry about it. Because I've noticed at night, there's a lot of times when I'm thinking about all the different things and the things that happen in the day, and I'm worrying, a lot of worry is happening. And so that impacts your sleep. So I think that's also good. So these are just little tips. So I wanted to talk a little bit about kind of future trends of mental health. There's something that's called transcranial magnetic stimulation. Anybody heard of this? TMS. A couple people. This is cool. It's been around for a really long time. Actually, since the 80s. This is Dr. Tony Barker, and this was at the TMS conference. Back in 1985, he's a scientist that figured out that you can use a magnetic coil, a special kind of magnetic coil, a figure 8 coil, to make a magnetic pulse. The magnetic pulse can be put over your body, and it kind of turns into a chemical signal, neurochemical. So you can actually make your muscles flinch with a magnetic pulse. So it's really cool. They're like, wow, this is neat. And he told us the story of how he invented this thing and how they worked on it in the lab and how it would heat up and they have to figure out how to cool the coil. And they're like, well, how can we use this in medicine? And they were trying to use it for muscle conduction studies and for MS and stuff like that. And they figured out that you can put it on your brain. And you can start, remember we talked a little bit about those neurotransmitters and the connections between the different areas of the brain? You can do a magnetic pulse. So it's basically no side effect treatment for depression. So I'll tell you how it kind of works. You get this, it depolarizes, this is how the neuron works. But you get this magnet, this is a Neurostar magnet, and it's like a kind of MRI magnet. It stimulates the cell, it makes a pulse magnetic field that induces a local electrical effect, and it depolarizes those neurons. And then you get this action potential down, and it kind of basically is mimicking, this depolarization is mimicking what medicines do. You have to put it in the dorsolateral prefrontal cortex, which is over here on the left front. And they found that if you do that, left front, it can start up kind of this chain reaction. So the pulse only goes down about 10 centimeters, but after, it sets up kind of a domino effect going down to the lower areas of the brain, causes neurotransmitter release into the deeper regions. So it's kind of doing what medicine's trying to do without taking medicine, without all those side effects. So it's kind of cool. So this is this dorsolateral prefrontal cortex. This is kind of showing it lighting up this is kind of the metabolism of that area. And the point of that slide right there is to show how it's the pulse that's happening on the surface, but it does set up a chain reaction. You can see it lighting up all the way down to the deeper regions of the brain. And so these have effects of improvement in depressive symptoms. Now you're thinking, okay, how awesome is that? Yes, it's awesome. We had it for a long time. We haven't been using it because it's super expensive. And they had it at a research facility. They had it at the University of Utah, but we never used it. It was just kind of research. 2015, 2016, insurance companies said, hey, I think we ought to try to cover this. So once insurance started covering it, more people entered the market to make those magnets, the TMS machines, and so the price went down, and so regular people were able to get a TMS machine. And so more people were getting it. And so they did the TMS trial. It's approved by the FDA. These are efficacy trials that show that it's proven efficacy. How effective is it? Well, in the TMS trial, they did a sham trial, which is kind of essential for this. So a sham trial means like the placebo arm had 740 patients with resistant depression. So people that have already tried and failed at least 4 medicines, okay? So hard to treat depression. And they had half of them do the TMS and half of them do the machine that kind of looked like TMS, that made noises like TMS. And they were able to show that 58% of the people had an improvement. So the depression score improved, 58%. About 38% had a full remission of their depression. 38% of the people. So you're thinking 38%, that's not that great. But these are people that have already tried and failed at least 4 medicines. So like, I feel it's kind of cool that there's something that we can offer people. And insurance pays for it. You have to be an adult over 18. You can't have any metal in or around your head, no cochlear implants or anything, because those tend to heat up. And basically have failed 4 medicines and have done some psychotherapy and failed some psychotherapy, then the insurance says, let's give TMS a try. There's another thing called ECT, electroshock therapy. ECT induces a seizure. They kind of anesthetize the person and they induce a seizure, and then they do about 12 treatments of that. That's even better. So that's about 80% effective for depression. 80%. And insurance pays for it. But it's like you have to go into the hospital. There's a chance of memory loss. I had a patient that was doing ECT, and he was super excited for Lord of the Rings when it came out, and he watched it during the treatment, and then I said, how's Lord of the Rings? And he's like, I can't remember. So maybe it's good because you can watch it twice, so you can be like, oh, that's awesome. But the memory loss is kind of difficult, and it's kind of really disruptive to your life. So I think that's why people don't really do it as much, the ECT. But TMS is kind of like diet ECT. It's like ECT light. You go in, the treatment is about 30 to 36 treatments. You go Monday through Friday. It lasts about 10 minutes. Go in, they do the treatment. It's like a tapping, a repetitive TMS. So it's not just a one shock, it's like multiple. Each treatment's about 3,000 pulses. It feels like a pencil tap in your head. They have trials with TMS for anxiety, PTSD, and they're putting it in different areas. So they're trying to do an inhibitory pulse on the right side. So it's pretty cool. Anyway, I got excited about it, so I love the TMS. So just wanted to, let's see, a couple more things. Treatments, trends, Adam Sandler, impressions. So the things that make me happy, I try to think of happiness. I don't know if that's the goal. To me, I think not depressed is the goal. So I'm like, how are you doing? Well, if I'm in the main level, I think I'm doing well. Not depressed is my goal. And so, I mean, I have these, I want to just to do justice to Devin and Haiti. You saw them a little. This is these guys now. So they are pretty well adjusted. We've lowered our expectations, and that's been awesome. Very happy with them. I hope they lower their expectations for me. My wife, this is Dana. She's definitely lowered her expectations for me. That made our marriage super awesome. Things that make me happy: fall leaves, awesome hot wife. This is something else that makes me happy, and this will make you happy too, I think. What happened? Okay, that's not what makes me happy. Sting is cool. This is at the USANA Amphitheater. The thing that makes me happy is I want you to look right here. You see this person? I want you to look at there again. This is it. They watch him bob his head. I was right behind the silver fox. So that makes me happy. The guy who's an elder apostle, former first presidency, is jamming to Sting. I wish I would have done Roxanne. That would have been awesome. But, all right, here's my last one. Got our last lotion. This one I'm going to give to, this one's called anger lotion. Okay? So if you're kind of too nice, you really want to just help something to get your anger up, this is this. Okay, so the question is just raise your hand if you know the answer. What song does Adam Sandler sing to celebrate Thanksgiving? Anybody? You know?
Turkey song?
The turkey song. Excellent. Get the anger lotion. There you go. All right, so to end up my presentation, it's the Treatments Trends Adam Sandler impression. I'm going to do my Adam Sandler impression. Not the turkey song. It's the Prozac song. Adam Sandler, Prozac song. Let's see if I can do this. Oops. It's a parody of his turkey song. Thanks. All right, so I have to like channel. Is Adam Sandler even relevant? Do you guys even know who he is? This is like old time, like 90s. So, to channel him. All right. Love to take Prozac. Love to take Prozac. Love to take the Prozac, cause it's good. Love to take the Prozac like a good boy should. Cause it's Prozac to take, so good. A Prozac for me, a Prozac for you. If you are depressed, it's what you need to do. I love to take the Prozac when I'm feeling low. I once saw a movie with Han Solo. Take that Prozac all night long. 50 million Mitt Romney supporters can't be wrong. Prozac for your son, Prozac for your daughter. I wish they put the Prozac in the drinking water. Prozac is so nice, you see. It's also used to treat OCD. You see, so if you have to wash your hands over and over, take a little Prozac and come on over. Prozac is the brand name of fluoxetine. 20 milligrams, you'll see what I mean. Prozac for the girl, Prozac for the guy. Some sexual side effects, but you still should try. Prozac for the anxious and compulsive eaters. I like to give the Prozac to the trick-or-treaters. Prozac for your dad, Prozac for your mama, Prozac for the country, thanks Barack Obama. Love to take Prozac, thank you Affordable Care Act. Thank you. So I can take some questions off, I can just do some questions offline here. And so if you have any questions, come to talk. I'm with the BYU Student Health Center on Mondays. And happy to see any of you there.